We are now in the Quincy Cemetery in Crockett County, just off Highway 54 and 152. This was originally Gibson County at the time of the incident of Solomon Shaw's murder occurred. I'll tell you about that in this video. Please like, share, and subscribe this channel. We share local history videos. Hope you find this interesting. I'm John Blankenship. Thank you so much for watching today. It's a windy, chilly day in December 2022. We are at the grave of Solomon Shaw and his son, daughter, and son-in-law and other relatives. The Bucks, the Brassfields, and also his daughter, who is married to a Tharp, is buried here as well. And let's take a look at a few of these today, and we'll give you just a brief history throughout this little recording. The grave of Solomon Shaw in Crockett County. We're in the Quincy community. This was originally in Gibson County at the time of Solomon's death. Solomon Shaw, who was a Mason of the local Quincy Lodge, which would later become the Alamo Lodge. He's buried here. He was born July the 4th, Independence Day, in 1804. Died September the 22nd, 1862. Solomon Shaw was murdered on his plantation, which stood in this vicinity just a little bit south of the river. Yankee soldiers would come out of Trenton, as one of the story. His daughter, Senny, would defend the Shaw home. We'll tell more about that story. There's a few stories that go around, and also the possible gold that was buried during the time of the war between the states. But here is his obelisk in the Quincy Cemetery in Crockett County, not far from Highway 54 and Highway 152. This tombstone, by the way, was put up of White Monument Works out of Memphis. An obelisk that's roughly, I would say roughly 8 feet tall, maybe a little bit taller. I'm 6 foot, so it's a couple of feet taller than me. This stone was knocked over several years ago and has now been reset. Let's take a look here at his son, who was also Solomon E. Shaw. He was born October the 8th, 1841, and died May the 8th, 1863. He was a Confederate soldier who died during the war. Was probably also home, best we know of, by stories that are told and newspaper accounts of the time of death of his father, but he would die a little bit later on the next year. Let's take a little closer look at his epitaph, and hopefully you can see this on video well. He was a devoted son and loving ever true brother. We'll make note of it's photographs of some of the other epitaphs that are on his marker. Next, here is Emily Buck, his sister, born April the 29th, 1835. She died May the 21st, 1869. Some of their children there, and Albert Buck, the husband, is right there. Taking a look around at what would have been probably part of the Shaw plantation. The farthest distance there, you can see the river. There's a story that he buried gold during the time of the war between the states. As of now, that gold has never been located. Solomon Shaw is a relative of mine. My 5th great grandfather, Zachariah Shaw, was his father. I descend down through Zachariah's daughter, Unity Shaw Bledsoe, So most likely probably the youngest sibling of Zachariah Shaw. We don't know Zachariah's wife at the time he married a second time. Now there can get a little confusion going here on the Solomon Shaws that were in Gibson County during this period of time. There's a Solomon H. Shaw that's buried in Dancyville, who was in this area. His father, Colonel Simpson Shaw, lived just up the road, if you could say up Highway 54. He was a little ways up that way. They were related, cousins. But it can get confusing when you start to look at court records of who is who, because sometimes they sign the name Saul, S-O-L, sometimes Solomon, sometimes Solomon H, sometimes they both signed Solomon. But he died in the late 1840s, so you can begin to distinguish some of them, but at times it can be a bit confusing. A lot of research has been done on the Shaw line. Let's walk around here a little bit in the cemetery and look at a couple of other graves. Here is Solomon's other daughter, Maddie P., who was the wife of J.C. Tharp, daughter Solomon and M.A. Shaw. Born in 1838, October of 1838, and then died in February, I believe it's 1864, yeah. February 1864. A tough time for the Shaw family in the 1860s. Tough time in our country. And what tragedy struck the Shaw family with the murder of Solomon Shaw. So much more information has been discovered on this family and that incident. And we may tell a little bit, just a little bit in this video about it, just to pique your interest. Solomon Shaw was murdered. There may have also been some slaves involved in that incident with those Union soldiers that are told that came out to the plantation home. We don't know where the plantation stood, but I imagine somewhere in this vicinity. These are some of the earlier burials out here. Whether this was originally the Quincy Community Cemetery or maybe the Shaw Family Cemetery, that we don't know. There was a hotel he owned at one point, some sort of boarding house. The census tells us that. He was a merchant in this area. He owned sawmills, cotton mills up closer to the river, which would later be taken over by his son-in-law, Wise Cooper, who married his daughter Aseneth. They ended up in Arkansas. He was an attorney, Confederate veteran. They owned those, which would be a little bit north of where we're looking off in the distance now. We'll show this one here because this has some connection, and we won't go into it all to this video. But the Brassfield family, this is Martha D., the wife of George S. Brassfield, died in 1878. He was 52 years old. The Brassfield family also ties into the Shaws through marriage in multiple different times into the Shaw family. So the graves of the Shaws, Solomon Shaw, his wife is most likely buried here as well, but there's not a tombstone for her. Lived in the Quincy community. Confederate sympathizer. Killed September the 22nd, 1862. Well, that's going to wrap up this video of the short story of Solomon Shaw and his family here in the Quincy Cemetery in Crockett County. I hope you've enjoyed this story of an ancestor of mine, and time stands still kind of here in a way. 160 years ago, Solomon Shaw was murdered September of 1862, and we stand on this property today. We still don't know all the answers, know a lot of research has been done, a lot more to do about the death of Solomon Shaw. Here was in Gibson County at the time, now Crockett County, wealthy landowner, and a distant relative of mine, the son of my 5th great grandfather, Zachariah Shaw. I hope you've enjoyed this video. Please, if you've enjoyed it, share it. We encourage you to like this, give this a thumbs up, share this channel, and you can keep up with us in more history videos we have on this channel. Thank you so much for watching.